Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It's Tuesday. It's May 21st. It's 7 a.m. in the morning East Coast time. We're going to break down this showdown slate. We're going to see if this series can get pushed to something competitive, maybe a 2-2 tie if they can go back home, Toronto, once again and take a game, push this to 2-2. We saw last night the Blazers fall apart once again at home, and that's just how dangerous this Warriors team is. And even without KD, I don't think anybody's going to beat them. I would love to see Giannis get a title. I wouldn't mind watching Kawhi, although everybody else on the Raptors is literally afraid to shoot the basketball at any point in the game in which it is needed. So, yeah, if it's not Kawhi, it's nobody on that team. So I don't want to see that team in the finals. I'd be fine seeing this Giannis team take on the Warriors, and that's what I'm hoping to see. That's what it seems like we're going to see. Vegas predicts that as well, and they're like the Bible for fantasy sports or just real sports. But I don't think anybody's going to beat this team, even if they don't have Boogie, even if they don't have KD. It's just something ridiculous how you can turn around a 20-point deficit, a 15-point deficit, or you can increase your 5-point deficit and make it to 15 or 20. The Warriors are just insane. But you're not here for just general basketball talk, or maybe you are. Maybe we can talk about that sometime. But thank you for being to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Sal Vetri. I cover the NFL, the NBA. People said they're getting hyped for the NFL. Yes, I am too. And also, we're going to be covering the MLB. And yes, the NBA is coming to an end. The showdown slates, somebody else said they split for first, $6,000, whatever it was. So a lot more of a chalkier build of a lineup. But that's still some pretty good money, I would say. I think it was in the 180, not the smaller tournament. So I don't know what they would have gotten in the smaller buy-in. But that was in the $180 buy-in. So congrats there. I think he won a good amount of money, $6,000. So congrats there. But it's coming to an end. I have a ticket for the Millie Maker. So that's really why I got to stay fresh. And it's also fun to make these showdown breakdowns. But the main thing is, or I guess more of a main thing for the summer, the sport of the summer, the WNBA, is back Friday. And just to give you guys a little taste, I'm trying to figure it out, but we've got projections coming for that and videos coming for that very soon. Hopefully by tomorrow I can break it down. The main thing that I'm trying to figure out is really reading up on these teams, figuring out the rotations, because there's only 12 teams in the WNBA. And we need to figure out how these new players are going to be impacted in those roles, trades that have been as recent as last week. So have to figure out how all that's going to go over in terms of minutes projections, which is the last piece that I have to add to the projections for the 2-game slate. $10,000 prize pool to first. So hopefully we see more of those. Hopefully we see some bigger prize pools. It'd be incredible. So yes, WNBA will be covering that. Golf is out. I'm going to hopefully be covering that if not today, then by tomorrow. The stat sheet will be up on Patreon. So hit me with a like. Let's get this video underway. Before we do, I'll shout out Draft Dashboard. They are sponsoring us through the rest of the NBA playoffs, so the rest of this Eastern Conference Finals, and then the NBA Finals, the Millie Maker, $1 million to first. You can use their tools over there. They have some research tools as well, so not just stats, things like that for the NBA, but also for the MLB. They have it for the NFL when that season comes around. They're going to be having it for golf and WNBA. They have their lineup optimizer that they're pretty much adding updates to every single day, trying to help you guys out, adding individual player exposures and things like that. So if you're entering just one lineup or 5 lineups and you want to see what you can do without having your biases in it and using a lineup optimizer, it's pretty good for that. The best thing is if you want to max out a 20-person tournament, if it's the quarter jukebox, 150 maybe, whatever it might be, get your biases out of that and also save you loads of time because you're not going to build those all by hand. So check out Draft Dashboard. There's a link down below for the rest of the playoffs. 30 days for $1 if you don't already have it. I know some of you do. You're in the Discord. People have mentioned here and there either some things that they see on Draft Dashboard or just why they like the tool. So if you do get it, let me know down below. If you have any questions about it, let me know. I can answer them. So yeah, let's get into it. Bucks, Game 4, Toronto. If we look quickly at this target offense sheet, what are we getting here? We're getting the Bucks still 2-point favorite. Vegas favors them barely on the road to go up 3-1 here. Totals at 216. These numbers are not pulling right as I'm seeing this right now. Total is 216, so I would give the Bucks a team implied total of 114 and Toronto a team implied total of 112. So there you go. So getting down into this. Last game, we saw Giannis struggle. He had a tons, like 20-plus rebounds, 23 or something ridiculous. But we saw him struggle offensively from the field. And then somebody asked him a question, were you disappointed in your performance? And he gave a very weird answer. He was just like, I put my brothers through private school. I give my family a house or something like that. I'm not disappointed in my performance last night. But the way he said it was just weird. Like, you can still be disappointed in how you played, and it doesn't take anything away from your accomplishments there. But yeah, did not play well. Kawhi did play well. I believe somebody told me that Pascal Siakam was needed in the captain spot. Marcus Gasol played well. Look, the game went into double overtime. So when you're looking into minutes and things like that, you have to really make sure to break down into popcorn machine because not every single player on the team, on both teams, was playing 10 minutes in these overtimes. Some didn't play any, or some played like 6. So you have to see how it affected their minutes. I looked at all that. I could break down the minutes. That's the biggest piece of this puzzle for showdown slates. Where do the minutes go? Because trying to predict production in a one-game sample size is really hard. I mean, just look, last game, Giannis not playing that great. And you have guys like Norman Powell playing extremely well, or at least getting 30-plus minutes, which some people in here were predicting. So good for you guys looking at the post-game comments. But some people are also predicting that Serge Ibaka was going to be relevant, and even in a double overtime game, the man only saw 14 minutes or whatever it was without any foul trouble. So I'll black out some of the players. I'll sort of make an initial player pool today if I was to play this slate. Have not played the last 2 showdown slates. Was almost going to play last night's slate when I saw Jordan Bell was starting because I like that a lot. I'm not sure how last night ended up in terms of, I don't see it on Popcorn Machine yet, in terms of Alfonso McKinney's production. I was very wary to go to McKinney, even though he was probably projected for around 30 minutes. He's a very bad point per minute guy, and there's a great chance even starting for 30 minutes, he only sees 10 to 12 fantasy points. I was much more preferring Bell if he started. So I want to see how that worked out. It could have blown up in my face. Maybe McKinney scored 35 points. I did see him get crossed up by Dame, so that was pretty cool. So upper tier, once again, the two guys, the stars, the all-stars, Giannis and Kawhi. I have Giannis projected for 38, Kawhi for 42. I had Kawhi for 44 going into last game, and I thought that he would get a little bit more of an extended run. He only saw 42 in regulation, and he played, I think, all 10 in overtime, so he ended up finishing with 52. Kawhi I have at 42 today. I have Siakam at 40. I'm tempted to give Siakam more minutes. I'm tempted to boost him to around 42, at the least 41. I really try not to do odd numbers, all I have here today. But I'm just having trouble pulling minutes from other people. I could significantly continue to downgrade Danny Green's minutes, but he's already at 22 minutes, so I don't know how much more they're going to take from Danny Green, a veteran who has been struggling, but still a guy that they're going to run out there. Kyle Lowry I have at 40, Marcus Gasol at 35. So I have these starters still, for the most part, playing big minutes, even if you go down to Norman Powell. So here's the guy from last game who played 29 minutes until fouling out with 1 minute left in regulation. So Norman Powell was on his way to play 30, or he played like 29 and a half, so 31 or 30 to 31 minutes. I have him at 31 today. And the thing to keep in mind is that Danny Green, it's going to say he played 34 minutes last game. Well, 10 of those were in overtime, and then he played the last minute and 10 seconds when Norman Powell fouled out. So you could take 11 of his minutes away pretty much, or 11 and a half, whatever you want to do. I did that. I gave him 22 minutes for today. Looking at his rotations, he did check, or Norman Powell did check directly in for Danny Green and out pretty much every single rotation. So they were keeping Norman Powell's minutes up. They wanted to. They said he was playing well. So Norman Powell I have for 31 minutes. I have Danny Green for 22. The only other real question marks here, Chris Middleton's minutes have not been what I would expect him to be in the playoffs, somewhere in the 40s. He only played 34 minutes in the last game. I think this is partially because Malcolm Brogdon's minutes are coming up. They are stabilizing around 30. They're not taking those minutes away from Eric Bledsoe. They're not coming off of Giannis's minutes. They're really not coming off of Brook Lopez for the most part, stabilizing around 30. Mirotic's continuing to get his 25. If anything, George Hill's minutes are going up, playing around 30 minutes, 29 minutes in the last game. So really right now, Middleton's been getting impacted. A guy who played great in the 76ers series has not been playing that well in this series, and that's indicated by the price point. He is now $7,400 when his teammate Malcolm Brogdon is $7,800. A guy who, as of right now, is still coming off the bench and playing similar minutes, or less minutes, really. So that's a surprising price point right there. Potentially a spot to stab Chris Middleton at a low point at only $7,400. He's an all-star, right? He's a great player in this league. He's one of the premier players in this league, maybe not on that top-tier level, but that all-star level. Maybe the lower end of the all-star level, but still a great player who now his price point comes to a spot where I'm interested. I'm intrigued by it. At $7,400, you could fit it into a lot of different builds here. So the top level, in terms of my interests, I've been going Kawhi over Giannis the last 2 games. The first 2 games ago it didn't work. Last game it worked, and mainly that was because Giannis fouls out, doesn't play really any of the overtimes, and Kawhi continues to rack up some points in those overtimes, and Giannis just didn't shoot well overall. Giannis, I believe, was still needed, if I'm correct. Maybe I'm not correct. Maybe those overtimes added up to the point where Giannis wasn't needed, but seeing that he had 23 rebounds, a few steals, a block, points there, he had to have had 50 real points, I imagine so. So I believe he would still be needed, and I think that's going to continue to be the case. These guys are going to be playing huge minutes. These guys play great minutes, or just playing really productive in the playoffs. As I look at this, I want to make Kawhi just a little bit of a bump to 1.35 fantasy points per minute, see what that does. Does a little bit. So I have Giannis projected for a touch under 60 today, 59.89. That's with him playing 38 minutes. That's with him averaging pretty much right around his playoff average and season average. It's really close. Playoff average is about 1.74. Season average is about 1.73 or 72. So if I put that in the middle at 1.73, it doesn't change much, I don't believe. It gets him to 60. 60.39 fantasy points for Giannis today. Kawhi Leonard, I have at 55.71, playing 42 minutes with a neutral defensive opponent. Just the way that he's handling the usage, it kind of cancels out any sort of defensive matchup for me. His usage in this series is just through the roof, 40+%. 1.35 fantasy points per minute is what I have him at. So today, I'm going to flip the switch. I'm going back to Giannis in terms of who I favor. The salary gap is a little less. We've been seeing it 800, 900. Now it's only 600. That's not really the biggest concern here. I do lean Giannis into the captain spot. But again, I'm fine going with a Kawhi if you're trying to choose between these two. It's obviously hashtag analysis. Either one of them is a great player. I lean on Kawhi at those top, or I lean on Giannis at those top ends. Pascal Siakam was needed in the last game at the captain spot. There's no reason that he might not be needed today. He's still going to play huge minutes around the 40 mark. He has a better matchup down low if Giannis is going to be coming off of him a little bit. But Giannis, again, Siakam being needed in the captain spot, a big part of that was Siakam playing 9 minutes in overtime with no Giannis out there. So that helps a lot when a good portion of your minutes, or 20% of your minutes, you don't have to worry at all about Giannis even coming back in the game. So that's why a big reason Siakam, I imagine, gets that extended run there. So I tone it back actually quite a bit from what I said about a minute ago. You can use him there. I'm not going to go back to it though. So Kyle Lowry, 8,200. Captain upside, nah, I don't think it's there. He would really have to get hot from three, and I just don't see that happening. Bulldog type matchup with Eric Bledsoe. I think he's fine in a utility spot. Marc Gasol, $7,000. Price finally comes up after being in the 5K range, so we missed out. The price came up big time. He got stabilized around 35 minutes, had a great game, hitting every single three, it seemed like at some point. Having projected for 36.5 fantasy points today. I like Gasol today. Have him in right now as a bit of a favorable matchup, which I believe it is against Brook Lopez or whoever might be down there. So yeah, give me Gasol in the utility spot. I do like that. Give me Middleton, which we're about to get to right now, 7,400. The price point is coming down cheap enough to a point that I do like. Have him projected for 37 fantasy points. Have him projected very similarly in terms of pure points to Kyle Lowry, who's $800 more. Have him projected more than Malcolm Brogdon, who's $400 more. Look, these are projections. It's a one-game sample. I understand that these are not going to be really probably anywhere near where these players end up outside of the high and low range. But I'm fine going with Middleton at 7,400. You're getting better value or nice value there. Eric Bledsoe at 6,600. He's getting now to a point where this gap between him and Kyle Lowry is good. It's a $1,600 difference, and I'm not sure that that's the difference in the player that they are. The difference, though, where it comes in is Lowry's going to be playing 10 more minutes. And it's really hard for me not to like a guy playing 10 more minutes, even with that salary increase. It's hard for me to try and get there. Now, if you're telling me that I'm going to go Bledsoe over Lowry, I like the rest of my lineup, it leaves $1,600 on the table, then I'm fine with that. There's no reason that Bledsoe can't play 30 minutes, score 34 fantasy points, and Lowry play 40 minutes, score 32 fantasy points, or even score 35 or 36. As long as the rest of your lineup performs pretty well, you still leave money on the table. I'm fine with that. So that's more of the upper tier, I guess you can say. We have it projected right now or filtered by fantasy points. Let me filter this real quickly just by salary so we can see exactly the ranges and the tiers that we're working with. So you got to make stands in showdown slates, right? In terms of player pools, at least. And maybe you don't. Maybe since there's only 17 players getting minutes today, in my opinion, that's what I have. That's really what we've seen all series. I think the only injury news today is that Kawhi's fine, which, yeah, we know he's playing even if he is banged up. And Pat McCaw is out for this game. Pat McCaw has not seen a minute, at least in the last game or two. So, yeah, no real injury news. There's 17 players that are going to see any minutes in terms of these rotations. I like this series a little bit more because we're a little bit sure on where these minutes are going. We haven't seen anything wacky. We haven't seen injuries that are really impactful like we have in this Golden State series that just ended. So what I'm doing here, keeping Giannis, keeping Kawhi on the upper level. I like that. Keeping Siakam as an option and Lowry, of course. Malcolm Brogdon at $7,800. The price is getting expensive there. I'm going to be honest with you. It comes up another $800 for a guy who, haven't projected for 31 minutes, and realistically, it's probably closer to 32 today as he continues to get healthy and continues to be very clutch in that overtime game towards the end of the fourth quarter, being very clutch and being out there. So I'm going to keep him in as well. Middleton, I do like a lot. Middleton, I can kind of highlight as a guy that I will be targeting to get into my lineups because he's at a price point now where he's priced outside of this upper tier. The upper tier right now, you can include Malcolm Brogdon if you want, but the 8K and above, Lowry, Pascal, Kawhi, and Giannis, I believe Middleton is a player in there. Yes, he's been slumping, but this is a point in fantasy. You get guys on their low end. Their price is going to stabilize at a bottom number, right? We kind of saw that with George Hill. We saw that with Marcus All in the series, and then it's going to shoot up. There's a great chance that in this next game, you see Chris Middleton's price at $8,400 because he had a good game. So I do like Middleton. Marcus All, $7,000. The price does come up, so hitting guys when their price is up is not ideal, but again, it's a one-game slate, so you're forced to do these things. Have him projected for 35 minutes. He's one of the few guys on this slate that I have projected for 35-plus minutes. There's like 6 of them, so it's clearly a guy that I like for utility purposes. Let's go to the cheap end. Fred VanVleet played around 20 minutes in the last game. I'm not really sure what sparked this extended run for him. Danny Green seeing less minutes, but I believe that was mainly a factor of Norman Powell. So if we look at Fred VanVleet a little bit, a guy who has not been seeing this much minutes, if you take out the overtimes, he played 21 minutes, pretty good. He checks directly in for Kyle Lowry at the end of the first quarter. He plays his 2 minutes there, and then he starts the second quarter, plays 4 minutes. So Fred VanVleet only played 6 minutes in the first half. That's usually what we're used to seeing. We're used to seeing Fred VanVleet play these 12 to 14 minutes bursts. So why does he play an extra 15 minutes in the second half? And then all of the overtime minutes, I imagine all of the overtime minutes because Kyle Lowry fouls out. So that's why right here. Kyle Lowry fouls out, and that's what I thought I saw earlier. 6 fouls. Kyle Lowry is out of the game with 6 minutes to go. So that's where you get your Fred VanVleet extra run. So now I feel confident about my projection for him. Because you see Fred VanVleet come in for 5 minutes here, right? He comes in for 3 here and then another 5. So he's going to finish around, you can go with 8.5 plus 6. He's going to finish at about 14.5, 15 minutes, which is what we've been seeing. He gets extended run because Lowry fouls out. He checks directly in for him. Perfect. There you go. On air, we've solved the issue. That makes me feel comfortable because he would have seen only 15 minutes, projecting him today for his 15 minutes. If that's the case, I don't want any. We're going to black out Fred VanVleet. We're down to 16 players for a player pool. Pat Connaughton, an easy blackout for me, averaging 11 minutes a game in this series, and it doesn't seem like there's anything coming better for him at least. So hold on while I take a sip of my drink. Coffee. Getting a little bit warmer. That's good. Oh, that is good. Let's go. Woo! The rest of this I'm really tempted, or I'm really in between. Serge Ibaka at $3,800, the price is now becoming interesting, right? He's playing 15 minutes, sure, but there's a flip that can be switched where he plays 20. And playing 20 at $3,800 for a guy who's averaging 1.1 fantasy points per minute in the postseason, that's pretty good. A $3,800 guy with the upside of getting you 22 or so fantasy points today. I have him at 17 today for $3,800. That's not terrible if you're trying to fit pieces in. So I'm hesitant to remove him from a player pool as of right now. And really, the rest of these guys I feel a little bit good about. The only guy that I'll kind of take out, Danny Green. And this might be a mistake on my part. He's $5,000. The minutes are coming down. If Norman Powell continues to see these minutes, even if there was rumors that Norman Powell was going to start the last game, then last second, it's the same rotation. Danny Green, though, checks out early. Norman Powell comes in about 5.5, 6 minutes into the game. So Danny Green would have only seen 22 minutes in this last game if Powell did not foul out, or 22 minutes in regulation. I don't know if he sees overtime minutes. Maybe they continue to give Powell a run. That's what they seemed like they were doing. So at $5,000, I don't want to take that risk, even in a showdown slate. Look, it may be needed. Maybe they stick to Danny Green today. Maybe he gets hot. Even if he plays 30 minutes, he's no need in your lineups, right? So Danny Green's out for me. This leaves us with about 15 players. Now, I've been trying to get to 12 to 13, or 14 players, correct? We had 17, we leave 3. So I've been trying to get to 12 to 13, and the reason that the way that I can get to 13 is pretty easy here, and it's just black out a guy like Serge Ibaka. Or black out a guy like Nikola Mirotic. Mirotic, I'm going to leave in just because I feel a little bit more stable with those minutes, and like a guy like Chris Middleton, hasn't been playing as great, but nothing in terms of at least Mirotic's minutes are being affected. Still seeing his average around 25 minutes. If he just starts a game off hot, it's good. Now, here's the thing, and keep this in mind. If they finally decide, and I don't know if they will, to take out Nikola Mirotic out of the starting lineup, which this is not the starting lineup they used for the far majority of the season with Brogdon. It was Bledsoe, Brogdon, Middleton, Giannis, Brook Lopez. If they finally take Mirotic out, put him on the bench, I don't completely hate that. I think he still sees decent minutes, at least 20 off the bench, but I'm not liking it as much. It probably leads me to not play Mirotic, probably leads me to play, or not play as much Mirotic, if any, and it probably leads me to play a good amount more of Brogdon. Although Brogdon right now finding success off the bench might be because his usage is just higher off the bench. Now, this is the playoffs. Guys are playing big minutes. You're still having Giannis on the court with Brogdon a good amount. Same with Middleton. But at least there's extra minutes where they're not. If Brogdon's going to play 30 minutes tonight and he's starting off, or he's coming off the bench, there's a good chance 10 of those minutes are, or 8 of those minutes are without a Giannis on the court or a Middleton, or even both for some of them. So if Brogdon comes into the starting lineup, it's not as good as it actually seems. It probably gives him an extra 3-minute boost, so maybe that neutralizes it. I'd have Brogdon around 34 minutes if he starts. I'd bump Mirotic probably down to around 22 to 21. But right now, we don't have that news. Right now, there's no indication that that's going to happen, although it's going to happen at some point, I imagine. Most likely, definitely, if they make the finals, they're going to run that lineup, a shooter's lineup more so, against the Warriors. So right now, I will go ahead, as I continue to look at it, I will black out Serge Ibaka, who back-to-back games, even after people were telling me, oh, Serge Ibaka said that he wants to play better. He's gonna play better. He told the media he's gonna play better. Well, he came out, he played 15 minutes. He came back, he played 15 minutes, and at one point they put him in the game for like a 2-minute burst, and he was just, look at this. They put him in the game for a 2-minute burst, misses 2 shots, gets 2 rebounds, and they're like, you know what, Serge, get out of the game. We're going to be putting back in Kawhi. Get out of the game, please. So Serge only plays 2 minutes in the second half, which was interesting. I'll give you that. The fact that Serge Ibaka plays no more run in the second half, and it's because Marc Gasol played the last 16 minutes of the game. So that's good to see for your Gasol shares, that Gasol played the whole fourth quarter. The only other Raptor to play the whole fourth quarter was Kawhi, but he also played the last 4 minutes, 3 minutes and 40 seconds of the third quarter. So that's pretty good. That gives you a little bit more confidence. It does, though, if you want to make the argument for Serge Ibaka, you could say, well, Gasol's not going to do that every time. Ibaka probably sees an extra 3 minutes or so give him 18 minutes instead of his 15. Yada, yada, yada. Now he's projected for closer to 20 fantasy points. He's 3,800. I get it. Serge Ibaka is cheap. I'm fine with you keeping him in your player pools. I like to filter mine down as much as I can. So, cheaper end, Ersan Ilyasova. You're going to say, Sal, what the heck? You're keeping Ersan Ilyasova in your player pool at $2,000? Yeah, I want something really low on that cheaper end. Ersan's been seeing stable minutes, right? The minutes came down in the last game to 13. He's been seeing around 15 or so a game. So I will keep Ersan in there. The fact that Brogdon is going to get more minutes is going to definitely hurt a guy like Mirotic if Brogdon gets into the starting lineup. And if that's the case, it's going to hurt a guy like Ersan Ilyasova even more if Mirotic's coming off the bench and now his usage is just going to be crushed. So I will keep, though, $2,000 Ersan in with the disclaimer that I'm not probably going to be playing much Ersan. Like, there's a good chance that you could black him out. I only prefer him to a guy like Ibaka because I see their minutes being similar today. I see at least their production. Ersan's been a fantasy point per minute guy, a little bit above it in the playoffs, being similar, and I'm saving $1,800 or so if I'm going to Ersan, or $1,800 exactly. If Ersan gets a 15-minute bump today and scores 17 fantasy points, something like that. That's what you're looking for if you want to start him. I'll keep him in the player pool as a super cheap deep dive. Norman Powell at 3,400 is too good of a play. Yesterday, I was not that convinced in McKinney, even if he was starting with 30 to 32 minutes. And the reason was he was just going to lose a lot of his usage. And he stinks off the bench to begin with. Now he's coming into a situation where he's not going to have, or he shouldn't have a lot of usage in the starting offense. I really should look into the numbers, but regardless, my idea before the results really don't impact that too much outside of maybe just a little bit of a learning experience because his usage does go significantly down with those guys, and even if he does play big minutes. The only reason that made McKinney really nice was he was really cheap in a showdown slate, and people overreact to some news. Norman Powell at 3,400 is in a similar boat, but Norman Powell has been a better fantasy point per minute guy. McKinney's in the 0.6 range. Norman Powell is in the 0.85 range. That's a big difference. If you're playing 30 minutes, which I have Norman Powell projected for 31 today, he would have played 31 or 30 in that last game if he didn't foul out with a minute and a half left. If you give that difference, that's a difference of like 5-6 fantasy points right there. He's projected right now for 25, a little over 25. If I give him 0.63 instead, he's projected for 19.8. 6 fantasy points exactly. That's a big difference, especially in showdowns, especially since it's so variant that range is actually wider than that when you take into account ceilings and obviously floors, but ceilings as well. So Norman Powell at 3,400 really should be a staple in everybody's lineup, especially if there's an opportunity for him to start, but I'm fine with him coming off the bench a little bit more, getting more usage without Kawhi on the court, things like that. George Hill, the guy that I've been loving all postseason long. Price is finally up. I don't know if he was 3,800. I don't know if he was 34. I want to say he was 3,400 in the last game at the price. 38. Okay, so he did come up a little bit, and then he's back to where he is right now. Now the price is up to 5,400. That's a lot. He played really well towards the end of that fourth quarter and in the overtime as well. They were trusting him. 5,400 is a lot of money for George Hill, especially when $2,000 more. $2,000 is a big gap, but Chris Middleton's right there for $2,000 more. I do have interest in George Hill at that price point. I still do have him projected for good minutes. 27, I give him 28 if you want to give Brogdon 30. I have 31. I don't like the odd numbers, but I just did not feel comfortable giving 30 minutes to Brogdon in a game where I think he sees increased run. So right now, realistically, this is what I'm looking at. And the more I look at this, I'm blocking out Ersan. Ersan could play 15 minutes, whatever. I don't care. I'm blocking him out. Sal, you wanted the cheap end option. I know. Norman Powell will work for me. And this is a day when I'm fine putting 100% Norman Powell into my utility spots. It's bold. If I enter 10 lineups, they all pretty much rely on Norman Powell to some extent, right? At that point, if he crashes and burns. But if we get news that Norman Powell is going to be the same capacity, which I don't see why they go away from that, I have 100% Norman Powell. That's what I'm going to go with today. That's where I'll get my cheaper end value from. So now we're down to a 12-person player pool, which is what I've been trying to get down to, and I like it. So high end, Giannis over Kawhi for me. When we get into sort of this mid-range section, if you wanted me to give you a secondary, a tertiary captain option, it'd be Chris Middleton at 7,400. So it goes Giannis, Kawhi for the captain for me, and then Chris Middleton for my third option. That's it. Outside of that, I don't want any captains. I don't want to get cute. You can try and get cute and go Norman Powell because you want to get cute and go Myers Leonard last night or whatever it was when Myers Leonard was playing well. Don't try and get cute. These guys that are projected for 60 fantasy points, Norman Powell's 25 in the captain spot, 30 even in the captain spot, is not going to help you make up that gap, that differential. So Giannis, Kawhi for me in the captain spot, then Chris Middleton reinforcing it once again. Outside of that, I have no real interest in captains. Guys that I want to get into my lineups, I already said Norman Powell. I'm fine 100% locking him. I want to get Chris Middleton into my lineups. I'm very fine getting Marc Gasol playing 35 minutes, but the last 16 minutes of the game, closing that out, the only guy alongside Kawhi Leonard to do that, that's a lot of confidence for me. George Hill at 5,400, I'm still fine getting to it. The price point, though, is coming up to where you're getting pretty guaranteed minutes around the 25, 26 mark, even if Brogdon sees an increased run. You're getting some good production in the 0.85, or he was 0.8 before the last game in terms of playoffs, and that definitely went up. So 0.2, so I haven't projected for 22 fantasy points today. But again, $800 more. I do prefer Eric Bledsoe if you can get there. Now, once again, Sal, I'm playing George Hill over Bledsoe. It lets me leave $800 on the table. It lets me leave $1,000. Do you do it? Yes, I do it. That's if you're playing a GPP, yes, and you shouldn't be playing cash. If you're playing a GPP, yes, I do it. So that's really where I'm going. The slate, for the most part, is very concise in the options that you have. I guess I can leave it at that. Once you put a Giannis or a Kawhi in the captain spot, you put your Powell in. There's not many more ways that you can go to try and be different. You can go 5 guys from one team, 1 from another, or whatever it might be. If that's where you want to go to be different, I'd say leave money on the table, as I've been preaching. So that's where I'm at right now. Don't really have strong takes on Kyle Lowry. Pascal Siakam, my only strong take is he saw 9 extra minutes in overtime without Giannis guarding him. So that's why he really got to that captain potential. He was playing great in regulation, don't get me wrong, but just that extra bump for him. So I don't want to get carried away and put him again in the captain spot. Fine putting him in the utility. There's really no take there. He's going to play big minutes similar to Lowry, right around 40. Malcolm Brogdon, minutes have been steadily coming up. The price, though, has been coming up faster than the minutes have, but the production is there around a fantasy point per minute. I do prefer Chris Middleton for $400 cheaper. I might even prefer Marc Gasol for $800 cheaper. Bledsoe, Brook Lopez, and George Hill. Out of those three, I do prefer getting to George Hill the most, especially he's the cheapest too, so that helps. Brook Lopez, I'm very meh on. He's going to see 30 minutes probably today. He's going to have a difficult matchup. He's going to have to knock down threes. That's Brook Lopez every single day. There's really no other way to kind of talk about him. He's going to be a plus player. In the plus-minus category, he will be a plus if he hits his own threes. He will be a minus if he does not hit his threes. That's what it comes down to. That's really the only way he's effective for this team. So you can throw your dart at him tonight if you want. I usually don't, but we'll see what the lineups look like. So thank you guys. Thank you girls so much. It's a 14-game MLB slate today. Might break it down quickly, but I'm going to be looking into WNBA today, finishing up those projections to talk about them tomorrow. I'm going to be adding the sheets for the golf. They'll be on Patreon. These projections will also be on Patreon. You can check them out. My name's Sal. Best of luck, everybody, today. Peace out, gang.